Hey guys, this one strategy will improve your overall chess understanding and help you level up. I'm talking about the idea of playing knight a5 on knight a4 very early in the opening stage. See, the idea of playing knight a5 is well illustrated in the two knights defense and the Ruy-Lopez. However, I'd like to examine it from the perspective of the Paris defense, which I highly endorse and recommend to every chess player. I mean, not just because I have a great course on the Paris, which you can find at kasperchess.com or on my Patreon page, but that it is a simple and risk-free opening response to one e4. But anyways, let's begin with the two knights defense concept. After e4, pawn to e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, and knight f6. The top played move in this position is pawn to d3. Don't ask me about the fried liver attack. I have another video about that. So I'm looking at the top played move pawn to d3. This is what most people play in rated tournaments and other serious matches. The idea is just to defend their e4 pawn, period. Now, bishop c5 is the most recommended move in this position, which introduces the Gyoko pianissimo. Now, in this position, say white plays knight c3 and you go d6, then they cast shot and you play h6, stopping this. They play pawn to h3, stopping your bishop, you cast a shot, and then rook e1, just an example move. Question: what do you do next? This is where most average players get stuck. And this is where we receive all sorts of questions like, what are we supposed to do in a middle game? What's the middle game plan in the Italian? Because it looks like you can't advance anymore. Should we play king h7? Should we play queen e7? Should we play bishop d7, bishop e6, or what next? Now here is the rule of thumb, you guys. Once you see that the position is symmetrical, or once the position appears to be equal in your eyes, or whenever you run out of ideas in the middle game, think of the side of the board which is opposite to your king. In this case, think of the queen side, and this will change your life, you guys. Whenever you get stuck, you don't know what to do in a middle game, it is time to stop thinking about the side of the board where your king is. Forget about your king side, especially if it is well secured. Start playing from the queen side. Just because the name of the game is chess, it doesn't mean all you have to be doing is chasing your opponent's king anyhow. Anyway, so these are instances where you want to consider moves like a5 and knight a5. So in this case, knight a5 wins. The other advantage of playing knight a5 is you just want to get rid of white's light squared bishop as quickly as possible. And the other reason of playing knight a5, frankly speaking, is to free up your c pawn. So you're going to put your c pawn on c6 and start advancing as highlighted, or even on the center of the board. You don't need your knight to sit on c6 forever. It blocks your c pawn. So that's why we want to play knight a5. That's point number 2. The other piece that is kinda misplaced in the Italian, if you think about it, is the dark squared bishop. It's not doing much on c5, especially that white doesn't have any weaknesses on the king side. So you will think of putting it on b6 and probably allow for pawn to c5. At this point, most of your opponents play bishop b3, after which you just take. If they try something like bishop d5, this might be the perfect moment to play pawn to c6, chasing that bishop away, and then you take it like this after ab. Again, since there's nothing to do on the king side, you just continue playing on the queen side. Let white do something about that. They play knight e2 most of the times. There's this other idea where they put their knight on f5. But see, the other idea of playing on the queen side, you guys, at least you have other moves like queen b6. You can also play pawn to b5 in this position, but think of pawn to d4 anyways. Two knights plus white's pawn are all eyeing the d4 square, so that's why queen b6 wins, in my opinion. Knight h5 is also playable in this position, since you intend to put your knight on the juicy f4 square. That is another strategy you want to learn. So queen b6, preventing pawn to d4 anyways, because if this happens, you are always ready to take back with your e-pawn. And by the way, this is another point. Whenever you see pawn to d4, just take back with your e-pawn. Whenever you see pawn to d4, just think of taking back with your e-pawn to release tension on the center. The moment you do this, white's e-pawn will become useless somehow because they can't play pawn to e5. You just take and open the center. Knight takes e4, rook e8, preventing e5, because if e5 comes, we're just going to take. That will be a free piece. The knight will be hanging. So that was a simple example in the two knights defense. Now, as you already know, I'm not a fan of the Gyoko piano with bishop c5 because I feel the dark squad bishop on c5 is kind of misplaced. Not to mention that when you play bishop c5, you're exposing your dark squad bishop to all sorts of pawn attacks, especially d4, which is why I prefer going with the Paris defense. And hey, it only takes 2 seconds to subscribe. By doing so, we are growing this community and you are telling YouTube that we like this guy. YouTube will start recommending my videos to a larger audience. I don't need the money for these YouTube videos. I just need your love and support. That's how we're going to beat the YouTube algorithm. Let's go. Now, let's go the Paris way. And I'm not just marketing my course, even though I am to some extent. Anyway, that's how you support this channel. After e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4. Instead of playing the Gyoko piano with bishop c5, the move I recommend for everyone is pawn to d6, the Paris defense. At least you won't have to deal with pawn to d4 meeting your dark squad bishop, kind of the max range attack or the deuce gambit. You won't face that ever. Now, of course, if white plays d4, you just have to take, like I mentioned before, and I won't spoil it much for people who bought my Paris defense course. At this stage of the game, let's look at the move pawn to d3. Now, hold on. If I turn on Stockfish in this particular position, I want you to see the best move that it is going to recommend. See for yourselves. Knight a5 is what Stockfish recommends. This speaks volumes, you guys. This is a game changer. Again, why would you want to play knight a5? 3 reasons. Number 1, obviously, is to get rid of white's monster bishop. Number 2, you want to free up your c-pawn and attain your favorable pawn structure on the center. Number 3, you want to free up your f-pawn so that in the near future you may play pawn to f5 freely without having to worry about any pins. So now you know. Once you get rid of that monster bishop, it becomes easier to continue playing in the middle game and you will never get stuck ever again. By the way, if bishop b3, you just take. Once again, if they play bishop d5, that's why you have pawn to c6. They are going to play bishop b3 and this is when you take, and after ab, once again, let the engine show you the best move, not me. Pawn to f5. You see what I was talking about. So now you have seen that I didn't smoke before creating this video, even though I don't smoke anyway. And true, that's what you do. Pawn to f5. Next, it's up to you to advance that pawn or take. Frankly speaking, I love advancing this pawn, just taking up more space on the king side. If pawn takes, you already know what to do. You take back with the bishop. Anyways, let's say white just castles short. The move you want to consider is knight f. You know, if pawn takes, again, you're going to develop your bishop with tempo. If bishop g5, you can play bishop b7, that's okay. But why not testing the waters? h6. Why are we not taking on e4? Look, we're just waiting for white to help us develop our light squad bishop, so we are not bothered. But that's just a strategy you can take if you want. After pawn to h6, this now makes sense. If white plays bishop h4, you can easily trap that bishop like this. That's the whole idea, but not too fast. Back on move 4 where you play knight a5 and then white plays bishop d5, you go c6. One move I want you guys to know that it's possible in this position is bishop takes f7 for white. But this is a more theoretical move and I want you to know what to do against this. Whenever you put your knight on a5, white will try to do this just to confuse you. The whole idea is if you take back, now they go knight g5 check. For example, king e8. Why did white sacrifice a bishop? Well, it's all because they saw that your knight on a5 was somehow trapped on the side of the board. It only takes them to play pawn to b4 to trap your knight. And so this is where you can just continue with your normal development, knight f6, so that if they take, you now take back your pawn and things are equal. This comes with check, by the way. So you just got back your pawn, which white took. The only difference is white took away your castling rights, but that's okay. According to Stockfish, the game is dead equal. So this is one little trap you always want to remember after you play knight a5. Be ready to see something like this. bishop takes. And note the difference, you guys. After knight a5, white should not take on f7 immediately. This is losing because after this, they don't have pawn to b4. See, if they play pawn to b4, your c pawn is not on c6. So your knight can safely go back like this. So white needs to first of all trick you like this, where they force you to play pawn to c6 before they sacrifice on f7. This is just a simple trap for both white and black players. Now we look at the last example involving knight a5 with black pieces. This might also occur in the Ruy-Lopez, just like I mentioned. Now you first play pawn to a6 and after bishop a4, but you simply go pawn to d6. Again, the Paris move. If white castles short like what they do, you can play b5, by the way, that's fine. You can play bishop e7, that's okay. You can play knight f6. You can play bishop d7. The move I highly recommended in my Paris repertoire was bishop d7. I'm not gonna spoil it. That's enough. But let's look at this. Pawn to b5. Why pawn to b5? Once again, the idea is still the same. You just want to go knight a5 next, get rid of that bishop. For example, if pawn to d3, you can take, and after ab, f5 is now a possibility since there is not going to be any pin in the near future. But you don't really have to do that. The theoretical move once again is pawn to c5, which is the main reason you play knight a5. Okay, so you want to do that. This is your ideal pawn structure once again. If pawn to b4, you don't even take back, even though that's okay. In order to hold on to all your pawns on the board, queen c7 does the job. But anyways, in this particular position, CB is justifiable. That's just a free pawn. But I was just showing you the other idea of queen c7. So play pawn to c5, queen c7, knight f6, bishop a7 in castle short. Again in the Ruy-Lopez, after knight a5, instead of pawn to d3, this is where you might see your opponents playing pawn to d4. What did I say? Whenever you see this move, just take. If knight takes, yes, pawn to c5 looks attractive, but there is bishop d5. So this is where you want to play something like bishop b7, or just oversimplify things like this. After ab, again, tactically speaking, you can't just play pawn to c5 in this particular position due to knight takes b5. So you first of all want to play bishop b7, and after rook e1, that's when it makes sense to go pawn to c5. Maybe knight f5 will be played, but you have queen c7, you have pawn to g6, or even queen d7. Pawn to g6 looks great. Once the knight goes back, you go h5, h4 is coming, bishop g7, knight e7. By the way, if you're looking at this, you can just go pawn to d5 if you want, or just take. If rook takes with check, you have knight e7, the bishop will go to g7. After queen takes, you take back like this. There's a problem at the back. Again in the Ruy-Lopez, the other purpose of playing knight a5 is to free up your c pawn, and this is where you play pawn to c5. And now I'm telling you this, you guys, this is the secret pawn structure you want to achieve with black pieces in the Italian game or in the Ruy-Lopez. Of course, in this position, white may play pawn to b4, just trying to disturb your plan, but first you can take or just maintain your pawn structure like this. Knight c6, if white takes, you take back with your d pawn, and you're still controlling the d4 square with two of your central pawns, the e pawn and your c pawn. Anyway, from here it becomes easier for you to continue playing the game of chess. You may develop your light square bishop on e6, play queen c7, and bring in your a rook into the game. This video was sponsored by all of our paid members on Patreon. These are the guys who support Casper Chess financially. In return, we give them extra study materials and other premium content on Patreon to thank them in style. Not to mention that all of our patrons are at liberty to make video requests and ask any chess related questions. You can join free membership and pay later if you want through the link in the comment section down below.